Hi everybody, and welcome once again to my video blog. First of all, I wanted to give you some news about myself and other things. Well, a few months ago I've told you I was participating in a trans calendar. So it was a calendar of pictures of trans women, and the profits were supposed to benefit, trans people who need money to pay for hormones and SRS and other equipment. It was also a trans men calendar. It was kind of part of the same project. And the unfortunate news is that it seems that the trans men calendar got off the ground, but the trans women one didn't actually work out. Unfortunately, it looks like it's been poor management. The person who was organizing the trans women calendar didn't manage somehow to find 12 trans women who wanted to have their pictures on the calendar. And to me that just doesn't sound right, because if the trans men people were able to do it, and you know how much trans women like to be in pictures, something just doesn't quite seem right there. But anyways, hopefully the project next year will be managed by more motivated people and will actually work out. I just hope that the money that's been donated to the project actually makes it to people who need it. I guess that's all I have to say about that. I'm not actually directly implicated in the management of that project. Apart from that, I told you about a little over a month ago in my last video blog, that I was going to California with my research team, basically to meet people from Mozilla, because they were interested in our research project and they were considering funding us. And in that area, I actually have good news. It looks like we're actually going to get the money, and that's going to allow us to recruit more students into our research project. And things are actually going pretty well. There's several new students who have joined the project, and our project has now been made open source, is available already on GitHub, although we're not currently publicizing it because we don't actually consider it to be truly ready for a public release. But it looks like it's going to take off. Looks like we're going to start having publications pretty soon and all that. So this is all great news. Also looks like I probably won't have any funding issues, all the way until the end of my PhD, because when my scholarships run out, I'll probably have some form of corporate funding. So this is all going very well. Other than that, well, in my research team, I've actually been having a little bit of tension, unfortunately, with my supervisor. We have all sorts of technical decisions to make in the project, and we often end up having, technical arguments that, never seem to end, and that actually become pretty frustrating. And this is one of the things that brings me to the topic of today's video blog, is that I've realized, that I'm a pretty stubborn person. I'm pretty hard-headed. My mom used to tell me as a kid that I was hard-headed. I never wanted to let people tell me what to do. Always wanted to do things my way. Always was very insistent. Always wanted to be in control. And even today, I'm still like that. And I think it's just part of my personality. It's part of who I am, and it's probably part of the reason why I made it where I am today. In my studies, I always pushed forward. I always wanted to be the best. I always wanted to succeed. And, I did everything I could to get there. But also in my transition, possibly the reason I ended up transitioning is because I'm very stubborn. I really wanted to be able to live as a woman out in public, and so I worked hard to get there. And the reason I say that I was stubborn in that is that, society doesn't really encourage us trans people to transition. Maybe you have to be a little bit stubborn in order to make it. In fact, the therapy, when you're a trans person and you go see, a gender therapist, they don't actually really necessarily measure if you truly have gender dysphoria. You really can't peek into your head. But they make you wait several months in order to get a reference letter and before you can start hormones. And one of the things that they perhaps measure the most accurately is how determined, how stubborn you are, how much you really want to transition. And you have to really want to do it in order to be able to make it, and to get all that you need. I myself, only went through gender therapy for 5 months, and I ended up, giving up because I wasn't happy with my gender therapist. But I also had, to be very stubborn, to be very insistent, to try hard to find a doctor who would be willing to prescribe me hormones and all that. And so I think, maybe you have to be a little stubborn to be able to make it through transition. You have to be able to face all the refusals that society gives you and to push forward. And in a way that's a good thing. I think there's good aspects, there's positive aspects to being a stubborn, a determined person, in that you're perhaps more likely to succeed at what you do. You won't let obstacles stop you, and that's positive. It's called determination, strength of character. But there's a potential negative aspect, obviously, which is that perhaps people who are more stubborn are also often more selfish people. Transsexual people, I think, often act in pretty selfish ways. They act for their own benefit. We transition because we really want to do it, because it's really important for us. But sometimes we don't really think, how other people are going to react to this. I know that personally, my mother wasn't in favor of me transitioning. She was very afraid of what it would mean for me. She thought that transsexuals all ended up, prostitutes and drug addicts and all that. And, she didn't want that for me. I didn't really care how she felt. I just figured that I would be able to make it through transition, and it was what I wanted and what I needed, and so I did it. I also have to say that when I went for facial feminization surgery and for my breast augmentation, both times my girlfriend was, quite afraid of what the outcome would be. She wasn't really happy about me going through these procedures. She outright told me that she didn't want me to get breast implants because she really didn't like, fake breasts. But, I pushed and I did it anyways, because I was only really thinking of myself. I have to say that when I did that, I was only really thinking of what I felt I wanted, what I needed. And in my opinion, it was just, if people don't accept what I do, it's their problem. If I'm willing to take the risk and to get these surgeries, it's only for my own benefit. And I think fortunately things have turned out well, and I haven't hurt anyone in the process. But maybe that's not always the case with every transsexuals and every decision that can be made. I can tell you, that a lot of transsexuals get into relationships and don't tell their partners that they're trans. They don't tell their partners that they're trans, and a few years down the road, they have some kind of a collapse where they discover that they have to transition to be happy, and then they start marching towards transition, and they don't let anything stop them. And usually, very often, that means the end of the relationship. Perhaps most of the time, and that's kind of unfortunate. And I think we could say that when transsexuals get into relationships without telling their partner about their issues to begin with, they're being kind of selfish. And when you're a trans person and you have children, and you know that, transitioning could mean losing custody of your children and all that, if you choose to transition anyways, perhaps you're being a little selfish. You have a duty towards those children, but you're putting your own interest first. And I think it's really unfortunate, that often in our society it means when you transition, that your partner might be able to take children away from you, and that people are not as accepting as we'd like them to be. But in a way, it's kind of inevitable. I remember watching a documentary on TV here, and I think some people are going to recognize who I'm talking about, but there was this documentary on TV about a trans woman once who was being interviewed about her transition, and it seemed to me that during the documentary she revealed to her wife that she had spent $70,000, on plastic surgeries, that she had taken $70,000 out of their joint account to, proceed with SRS and FFS. And this person had 2 kids also, and when I saw that, I couldn't help but wonder, this trans person took $70,000 that belonged to the couple to spend on her own transition without consulting anybody else in the family, and this is money that, was she taking this money out of the kids' college fund? What was that? Is that really acceptable? And I understand that, trans people suffer. We suffer for a lot of reasons, and it's very difficult to be trans. But I think in some situations, you have to think about the interests of the people around you too, We suffer, and perhaps you've suffered for many years of being trans and not being able to transition, or not having the courage to transition, but that doesn't mean that you have the right to hurt everybody around you, to get where you want to be. I think you have to be a little considerate and maybe sometimes be patient. Of course, I'm not in a situation where, I have children, obviously. I've chosen to transition at my age because it seemed to be the easier route, and because I was very, very eager to do it. But, I have to say, if I was in that situation, I don't know if I would do it instantly. I think some trans people choose, in some case, to wait until the children are older because, they know that they would lose their partner and possibly their children, and sometimes I think that's the right decision. At the same time, I also know a trans woman who transitioned, while her daughter was still very young, and I think it turned out very well for her. Her daughter seems to be, pretty accepting, so I'm not saying that if you have children you can't transition. It's not the point I'm trying to make. But anyways, I guess this is it for today's video blog. I'm just trying to make a point, about the kinds of personalities that trans people maybe tend to have, and all that. So if you have any comments, feel free to post them on the video. Feel free to make a video response. That's it for today, people. Bye bye.